Number one, Nipex wire cutters make cutting cable so easy. I spent years struggling with blunt pliers on 2.5mm cable, whereas this goes through it like butter. There are insulated versions of these, but they're quite a bit more expensive than just the non-insulated ones that I have here. These are good on copper and aluminium, but do not try and cut steel with them because you will blunt the jaws. I think the average DIY is unlikely to find themselves requiring the insulated ones, given you really need them if you're going to be working on something that could be live rather than just cutting cable off a drum, which is what I use them for. Your typical DIY is more likely to be adding a single socket somewhere, spurring off an existing ring, or adding an additional spotlight in a ceiling, something like that. So not likely to be cutting into live cables, more likely to just be cutting off a reel. So a bit of 2.5mm twin and earth here. As you can see, these are just your regular side cutters. These are Draper Expert Ergo Plus. Would recommend these for side cutters, but trying to cut through 2.5mm twin and earth, you have to squeeze very hard, whereas these, minimal effort, you get a very clean cut as well. I don't know if you can see the difference there, but you've got a very square cut with those, whereas the side cutters have more of a tendency to just squish the cable. Number two, socket tester. This is just a LAP branded one from Screwfix. There's all sorts of different makes of these. Relatively inexpensive, but very useful. I typically would use it, plug it in a socket, you'll hear the buzz going off, and you go and switch the MCB off for the circuit, and then you'll hear the buzz stop, and you know that socket is now off. If you need to change the faceplate, something like that. Really useful. Because it's such a loud noise, you can hear it from quite far away. So if you're working, far from the fuse board, you can hear it go off, or you can hear it come on. The only problem with these is they don't show a earth, neutral, reverse. Sockets are well labelled. You're relatively unlikely to make that mistake, but it will show if you're missing earth or missing neutral, or you've got live mixed up with the live, neutral, and live and earth. As always, the links to all of these items will be in the description below. Number three, speed bore bits. Now these are excellent for cutting through joists. They go incredibly quickly because of the fluted end and the screw head. They pull themselves through the joist very quickly in a way that your typical spade bit just doesn't. The shape also means that they get the material out very quickly. Now they come in three sizes. Sizes are rubbed off, but I think they're 15, 20mm and 25mm. So electrical and plumbing, incredibly useful for putting holes through joists when you're making some kind of change. Highly recommend these for running cables and pipe work through joists. They make very, very quick work of the joists, and accurate cutting too. Will do. Also worthy of a mention, these cone cutters, very useful for holes into plastic back boxes, patches boxes, something like that, where if you're trying to use a spade bit, you'll just shatter the box, and also if you happen to have just a big enough regular wood drill bit, you're likely to shatter the box, whereas these cut much better and you get much more control over the size that you want. These come in a set of three, 32mm, 12 and 20. Personally, I find myself using the 20mm one the most because that's a pretty common conduit size, so if you are adding a surface box, something like that, 20mm, excellent choice. Next tool, Ferrule crimper. Just a ratchet type crimp, and you get a whole range of crimps. This one is a cheap one from Amazon. Never heard of the brand before. Est Moon. You can get quite expensive branded ones that you would know of, but average DIY doesn't need them. Incredibly useful where you've got flex, typically on appliances or heating systems, something like that. So I was changing the zone valve on my heating recently, and one of these works great for ferruling up the ends so you can put them into terminals correctly. Personally, I wouldn't bother with the branded one. They're very expensive. This is relatively inexpensive off Amazon, so would recommend this. Now here, this is just a bit of a 3-core flex where I've stripped off the sheathing and the core. This is, I don't know if you can read it on the cable there, 0.75 mil. So I can look on the box here and see which one I need for 0.75. Twist the end of the cables up. Now, despite saying 0.75 mil, the 0.75s are actually a bit big, so I'm going to go for these red ones. Pull these over the end. Right, so you've got 3 on there. Squeeze them in. I like to just do it twice just to be sure that you've got a good connection, especially these are the cheaper ones, so you can see you get only get 4, whereas I think on the more expensive ones you get more teeth. Now you can see there's a copper sticking out the end there, but just take your side cutters and snip that off. Very easily tidied up. Now that is made off and ready to go into your connection. So when you screw down on that, you're not going to be damaging any of the cables because you've got a steel ferrule on the end there. Now you can get bootlace versions of these where they don't have the plastic on, but what I've seen some people do is just push the plastic on, push the ferrule on the other direction, and then you simply snip off the plastic. So you end up with just that piece on the end of the cable. Stanley auto wire strippers. Now this only really works on twin and earth. Wouldn't try and use them on flex, doesn't tend to work very well, or rounded cable. These are really just for twin and earth, but they do work great for stripping not only the outer sheath but also the inner cores too. Just makes for really quick work. There's lots of different brands of this very similar design around. These happen to be the Stanley Fatmax ones, which I've had for several years. Always worked well for me, but you see various different brands around. Very clean, very easy. It does have a habit of leaving these little tooth marks on the cable, but really not a big deal. And then same for your stripping your cores. Nice, even, clean cut. Very useful. As again, you get that mark on the cable, but you haven't gone through to the core. It's a very shallow mark. It's not really compromising the cable at all.